So you just took a CPE class and you're wondering, does this qualify for Yellow Book? I don't know how many times in a year I get a phone call and somebody asks me if a particular class qualifies for Yellow Book hours. So let's look at the new 2018 Yellow Book CPE requirements to make sure you're in accord with those new standards going forward. Before we do, you may be wondering, when is the 2018 Yellow Book effective? It's effective for periods ending June 30, 2020. So if you have one of those engagements or any periods thereafter, you need to follow the CPE requirements that we're about to discuss. Now, there's two buckets of CPE requirements in the 2018 Yellow Book, and they are the 56-hour bucket and the 24-hour bucket. And of course, you'll normally be taking a total of 80 hours every 2 years. And then you'll also need to get a minimum of 20 hours in each individual year. So let's take a look at the 56-hour requirement and the 24-hour requirement and see who is subject to each of these rules, and then what types of CPE classes qualify for each. Let's start with the 24-hour rule. So who is subject to this requirement? Basically, anybody that works on a Yellow Book engagement will have to be in accord with this requirement. There are some exceptions, such as if you have a staff member that works less than 40 hours on GAGAS or Yellow Book engagements for the year, they would not be subject to this requirement. Also, if you have college students that work on a temporary basis, they would not be subject to this requirement. But most everybody else that works on the Yellow Book engagements, whether it's a partner or a manager or a staff member, they'll be subject to this 24-hour rule. And this 24-hour rule is very much like the old 24-hour rule, in that you should be taking CPE classes that are specific to the environment in which you perform Yellow Book engagements. So if you're working, say, in city and county governmental audits, then your specific 24-hour CPE should be in those environments. Now, what types of CPE qualify for the 24-hour rule? Well, CPE that deals with GASB pronouncements, FASB pronouncements, those that deal with SASs, the auditing standards, those that deal with attestation standards, those that also deal with the Yellow Book. So any of those types of classes that are pertinent to your Yellow Book engagements would qualify for the 24-hour rule. Now let's shift gears and talk about the 56-hour rule. So who is subject to the 56-hour requirement? It's anybody that's involved in planning, directing, or reporting on a Yellow Book engagement. Now that's generally partners and managers, or maybe in charges. And then there's also a fourth category of persons that would be subject to this rule, and that would be anybody that works on Yellow Book engagements and charges more than 20% of their time in a year to Yellow Book engagements. So if you have a staff member and let's say they work 500 hours in the year on Yellow Book engagements, then they're probably going to be in the mix to follow this 56-hour requirement. So let's look at an example of someone that you hire during the year. And let's say this person has a total of 2,000 hours and they charge 140 hours of their time to 2 Gagas or Yellow Book engagements. And then finally, this person's not involved in the planning, the reporting, or the directing of the engagement. Would this person have to follow the 56-hour rule? And the answer is no. They're not involved in planning, reporting, or directing the engagement, and his total hours are less than 20% of his total Yellow Book hours are less than 20% of his total hours for the year. So this person would not be subject to the 56-hour rule. But let's change this mix a little bit. And let's say that this person on the second Gagas engagement, he gets a promotion. And now he's directing the engagement. Say it's an in-charge or a manager. Well, now, yes, he would be subject to this 56-hour requirement, and he'd need to get a total of the 80 hours because he would be subject to the 24-hour rule, but now he's also subject to the 56-hour rule. So it is possible that you would have some staff members that would not be subject to the 56-hour rule, and they could be just subject to the 24-hour rule. So again, to be exempt from the 56-hour rule, you must not be involved in the planning, directing, or reporting of the engagement, and your total Gagas hours has to be less than 20% of your total hours. That's a mouthful, but that's how that rule works. So what types of CPE could you take that would satisfy the 56-hour rule? We said the 24-hour rule required more specific CPE, but the 56-hour rule tends to be more general or broader. So you might take a class that helps you become a better writer. Say you write the footnotes for the financial statements, and you would like to become a better writer so that you could write those notes in a better manner. Well, that would qualify. Or if you took a class in learning how to become a whiz kid in Excel or Word, that would qualify. So the CPE that qualifies on the 56-hour rule is broader, and the 24-hour is more specific. Now you may be wondering, are there CPE classes that don't qualify for either? And the answer is yes. So just like before the 2018 Yellow Book, some tax classes may not qualify for Yellow Book CPE. Now, some tax classes might qualify, so I don't want to confuse you and say that all tax classes would not qualify, because some might if they are pertinent to the Yellow Book engagements that you perform. But tax classes such as estate planning or retirement planning usually would not qualify for either of the 56 or 24-hour requirements. Let's take a moment and talk about carryover credit. So let's say that you've taken 30 hours that would qualify for the 24-hour rule in the 2-year period for your firm. Can you carry over that 6 hours of excess time? And the answer is no. Next, let's talk about proration of hours for a new staff member. So let's suppose that you hired Joan on June the 1st of 2021, and your 2-year cycle for your firm, that reporting period ends December 31 of 2021. Well, you've hired this new person on June the 1st, and then what you want to do is look and see how many remaining full 6-month periods exist in the 2-year reporting cycle. And in this example, there's only one full 6-month period remaining. And then what you do is you take that 1 divided by 4, so we'll get 25%. In other words, there's only one full 6-month period. There's 4 6-month periods in the 2-year period. So 1 divided by 4 gives you 25%. And then for this new person, for the 24-hour rule, they take 25% of the 24, and they have to take 6 hours of the more specific type CPE. That's a little confusing, but you want to prorate these hours for a new employee that you hire, and you do so by looking at the remaining full 6-month periods in the 2-year reporting period and then prorate accordingly. So that's the Yellow Book CPE requirements. And in summary, what I'll say is you still have to generally have the 80 hours total in every 2-year period. You still have to have a minimum of 20 hours in each individual year. If you're a partner or you're a manager or an in-charge, you're going to be subject to that 56-hour requirement. And then also, if you charge more than 20% of your time to GAGAS engagements, you're going to be subject to the 56-hour requirement. And then on the 24-hour requirement, pretty much everybody's in the soup there. So if you work on a Yellow Book engagement, more than likely you're going to be subject to the 24-hour rule. So I hope this discussion is of assistance to you, and I hope that your Yellow Book engagements go well in the days ahead. Bye now.